It's the True Faith Podcast Live. It's the True Faith YouTube. It's the True Faith Podcast Live YouTube. That's my catchy new title. I am Charlotte Robson. I'm joined today by one of our patrons, which is a real treat. Adam Beckett has joined me from, by the way, America. So that's very exciting. We have transcended borders, and Adam is joining us from, is it Illinois?
Minnesota. So I live in Minneapolis, which is in Minnesota.
Okay, I wasn't sure how specific you wanted to be about where you were. But you're in Minnesota, which is very north. It's near Canada, isn't it?
Yeah, it's as close as you can get to Canada without being in Canada.
Okay, nice. So Adam has very kindly joined me. Message to our patrons: if you are interested in doing this with me and having a chat and talking football and, answering questions, please do drop us an email it's podcast@true-faith.co.uk, and we can arrange that. And a little bit more housekeeping before we really crack on. Our new True Faith fanzine is out today, digital and physical versions. Of course, sales in shops have plummeted because no one's going to the shops anymore because, spoiler alert, there's a pandemic. So if you are keen on getting one, or if you want to support fan print media, please do. You can buy them through our website, true-faith.co.uk. And I encourage you to do that because I wrote something in it, so why not?
Me too.
And so did Adam. So you should definitely extra buy it now. Okay, that's the admin out of the way. We are going to start with our questions, and we're just going to chat. And anybody watching live, please do whack your comments in. We can see them, and we will respond to them if they're good. Okay, from Norman. Norman wants to know, and this is good, isn't it? Because you're in America and I'm in England, so we've got one each. Norman wants to know, if you had one of the following hairstyles for the rest of your life, which would it be and why? A, Donald Trump, or B, Boris Johnson? Adam?
Boy, that's an interesting one to start with. I don't have really a hairstyle myself. For those of you that are watching online, you'll see that I've basically had the same hairstyle since I was about 12. So I'm not one to give a lot of hair advice. But what's interesting about this, I'm not totally sure that Donald Trump's hair is real. So I wonder if we need to look at what his real hairstyle might be versus the one that you see on screen. So a bit of controversy to start there. Whereas Boris's, I assume, probably is real, just absolute chaos. So much like what the rest of the world right now. So I think I would probably go with Boris, because I think you could probably tame that if you wanted to.
Yeah, that's true. I think Boris's is tameable, and that Trump's, I've seen Trump's kind of it flaps in the wind.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Go quite far back, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you can see where his bronzer has stopped.
Yeah, it's stunning.
Back. Yeah, I'm probably going to go with Boris as well. I think Boris's has a nicer blonde hue, and I'm not a natural blonde, but which will come as a shock to all of our listeners and viewers. But that's where I land. I love blonde. So I think we're both in agreement. What a strong footballing question to start. Okay, let's talk about Brian Mulhall. Ask questions. These questions have come through our Patreon page. If you're interested in joining our Patreon, you should be. Well done. It's about £7, I think, ish a month, and that gets you 3 to 4 extra podcasts a week, including professional views. We've got Andy Griffin and Keith Gillespie on board at the moment, and all sorts of fun stuff. But Brian Mulhall he has 2 things he'd like your thoughts on. One is the recent release of 2 of our medical/physio team and what you think it means. Let's pause there. Adam, what was your take on that news that we had let go of 2 of our medical team?
Yes, it's quite interesting, actually. So I read Craig Hope's piece, which I assume is where the reader is getting that information from. And it was a very vague piece. I think there's currently a sort of internal investigation going on whatever that means. The last one of those was, I think, Peter Beardsley's situation, which ended up being very bad for the club, a little bit embarrassing for everyone involved, and obviously had quite serious connotations attached to it. So I don't know if it's something behavior related, or if it's just simply performance related. I mean, we've had a lot of injuries, particularly over the last couple of years. I know it's something that the Truth Faith team debate a lot, and one of them is a soft tissue consultant for the club. So again, I don't know if it's performance related or if it's more sinister than that. I mean, I hope they are getting the backroom team fixed and filled out, because again, the injuries have really hurt us over the years, and it's happening again now. I mean, we've got St. Maximum this weekend is a doubt for another knock. Again, a lot of that's impact stuff, but you'd hope they're keeping the team fit and healthy. And I know they've got some wonderful people on that staff. Jamie Harley and Paul Catterson, were well renowned, particularly after restart, for helping the players stay fit and stay in shape and be ready. So we'll just have to see. I mean, my guess is that we probably won't get sort of a public conclusion from the club, because we never do about anything. So it'd be nice if that communication changed. More on that later, I'm sure. But I'm sure Craig will be, breaking an exclusive as he likes to do on whatever comes from that investigation whenever it happens.
Yes, Craig, of course, friend of the show, wrote an article this week. We've got another one to discuss as part of Brian's questions there. But yes, for those of you not super familiar, 2 members of the physio / medical team at Newcastle United have been placed on gardening leave pending an investigation. That's really all the information we had, as Adam has said there. So who knows what that means. One of them, I think, is a soft tissue specialist. So that does make you think, oh, maybe they're just not doing their job rightly, because we keep getting soft tissue injuries. But yeah, I think the underpinning point of what you've said there, Adam, is correct, is that this is a club that very reluctantly releases communication to its fans. And I suppose this was kind of a leak, really. I very much doubt, unless it's something particularly egregious, that again, there's going to be a leak about it. I very much doubt that we'll get any concrete.
I think what's a bit concerning though, Charlotte, is that the article did say that Michael Harding in particular is a very popular member of the backroom staff, the physio team. So, my gut always goes to, well, how is this going to affect the players? It was the same with when Neil Redfern left. There was a lot of sort of mysterious surroundings around that, and I think his assistant got promoted, Liam Bramley at the time, and I think he's now left the club as well. So this stuff tends to happen with Newcastle, and maybe it happens at other clubs and I just don't pay as much attention, but we seem to get 1 or 2 of these strange situations with Newcastle almost every year. And I just hope it doesn't affect the players, too badly. I hope the rest of the staff is keeping up with the workload, but also sort of from the mentality standpoint of the players. If there's too much shuffling of staff members, it's probably not that helpful for the group.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when confidence is teetering, any kind of knock to it, any kind of uncertainty or change could be negative. Hopefully not. Hopefully this is something that the players are aware of, like that they've, I would hope that the club is more communicative with the players than it is with us. I can't guarantee that. But, yes, I think that is a really, really good point. How is that going to impact the players? Is there sufficient cover? Are they going to backfill those spaces? I work in HR, so I'm going to use HR words like backfill there. Sorry. And then so that's interesting. I mean, I don't know what will happen. I don't know that they'll tell us what's going to happen, but I think fingers crossed it doesn't impact our players negatively, mentally and physically. the next one that Brian Mulhall wanted to ask, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, Brian, Graham Carr's interview and his legacy at Newcastle. We could probably do a whole podcast on like Graham Carr's legacy at Newcastle and his interview. This again, it was a Craig Hope article in the Daily Mail. If you haven't read it, do read it. It's interesting. It's an interview with Graham Carr, one of Mike Ashley's scouts. Let go under Rafa Benitez, but had been given a historic 8-year contract under Mike Ashley, went out to Europe, got us some of our, key players. I think he scouted Demba Ba and players like that. So yes, it's a really interesting article and it's really candid. I think he talks about his family life and how difficult it was leaving and things like that. What did you make of it, Adam?
Yeah, it was a really good article, and as you said, very candid and sort of open and honest, which is always great to see. I'd actually forgotten until I read the article that he was given the 8-year contract with Pardew. We just always remember the manager getting it. I think it just expired about 2 months ago, which is quite funny. So he would have still been manager. So yeah, it was a really good article, and again, just the number of players that came from his scouting system is stunning over the years, including obviously his time at Newcastle. They did gloss over a few of the shockers, though. I think the only one that was really mentioned was Emmanuel Riviere, which has got to go down and probably in the top 10 worst signings Newcastle have had in the Premier League era. I would say it's quite a good list. The top 10. You could probably do a podcast on just the worst 10 signings Newcastle have had.
That's an off-season podcast, but
yeah, we might have 1 or 2 in the team right now. But yeah, you can't say anything bad about his work, really. I mean, he did tremendously well to get us that French contingency. I think he mentioned Johan Cabaye as being his favorite signing, which was truly a great signing. And I think the best thing about that signing, as I remember it, is that it really didn't get leaked. No one really knew about it until maybe 2 or 3 days before it happened. I think actually Alan Pardew said it in an interview after a game that they were very close to signing a French centre midfielder who went on to be, a truly great player, part of that sort of generation that took us up to 5th. And you're just reading that article really sort of set in stone for me again, just how close we were to sort of getting back to that 90s and early 2000s team. It felt so real that season when we finished 5th, that if we had just kicked on, if we had just signed 3 or 4 players to make up that Europa Cup squad without damaging the Premier League squad, boy, what could have been is what I took away from reading that article. We only signed Vernon Anita, who you could argue was actually a player at the time we really didn't need based on the squad. We had many other needs that we didn't fill. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I did think the article was great, particularly some of the stuff about his family, very personal, very candid. And you wish him the best in retirement, whatever that may be for him. But yeah, it was a really good article.
Yeah, I think one of the takeaways for me, maybe it's a negative hat on, was it sort of underpinned for me, like you say, like how close we were to really fleshing out that squad and really like going places with it. I mean, he mentioned some names that he had brought to Mike Ashley, Aubameyang, like that's like, oh God, imagine if we'd got a young like Pierre-Emerick. I just think it would have been so good. But I think that it underscores the sort of Mike Ashley approach, doesn't it? I think he did a remarkable job with what he had. He obviously didn't fit into Rafa's vision in the way that Rafa scouted and does things. And he talks about that in the article as well, like about how that wasn't, he felt like it was his age that pushed him out, and he felt like, but I suppose that's sort of how he felt at the time. I don't know. I think the way that I see it is more like Rafa sort of came in with his own like crew, the way he did things. It was very like methodical, and he's got the people that he needs, and that would be my interpretation of why he was let go around that time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was very interesting reading about his interactions with Ashley, wasn't it? About how they went through transfers together. And I guess Mike would come over to his house occasionally, sometimes somewhat unannounced. It sounded like just drop by in the chopper and sit and talk about football and talk about players. But I think Aubameyang, they actually went together to scout at one point, which is a bit amazing because I wonder what buy-in other than the checkbook Mike Ashley would sort of offer when it comes to footballing talent. You know, I don't know. Maybe he's got a great footballing mind. We haven't seen it very much of it at Newcastle if he has, but I think, you know, he was probably bringing him along to try and convince him, you know, in person that they should sign Aubameyang. And there are a number of others that he mentioned as well. And it did also make me think, you know, just how difficult that transition must be from some of these continental leagues to the Premier League. You know, I don't think Florian Thauvin was a bad player in Europe, and he's obviously gone on to have a pretty good career back in France. But he was just so out of order when he came to England. It just didn't work from basically the day he signed. But again, they've gone on to have very good careers. So, you know, again, very, very interesting article. And, you know, I hope we see more stuff like that. But the Rafa thing, I agree with you. I think Rafa just wanted to stamp his own authority on the club and how transfers were done. I think he was used to a certain system. I think he was also used to working with a certain type of sort of scout and team when it came to doing transfers. And I think he's the only manager in the Mike Ashley era to have sort of final say on transfers, which is very rare. And I can't see Ashley ever giving another manager that sort of dominance, if you will, over the club. Which is why he didn't sign Joe Linton, why he didn't sign Alan St-Maximin, which perhaps he was wrong about, as it turned out. But yeah, really, really interesting stuff. I'd love to have Steve Nixon do a similar article while he's still employed by the club, preferably.
That will never happen, but it's a lovely dream. Mark is watching. Mark wants to know, win the League Cup and go down, or stop up, I imagine he means stay up, and win nothing as per usual. You know what? This week we did a Morecambe preview for our patrons, and I somehow, because I'm 150 years old, have made a picture of the Carabao Cup my screen background, my laptop background. So I opened my laptop today and I was like, this gigantic picture of the Carabao Cup is now like staring at me. And I was like, oh, okay, like this was obviously an accident. I'm not weird in that way. And but now I'm like, maybe it's like visualizing what we want. I'm like putting it everywhere. It's like putting pictures of the Carabao Cup everywhere. I don't want us to go down though, so I'm answering the question before you can. I'm sorry. I maybe would say win nothing and stay up, but the football gets better. I know that wasn't a caveat of the question, but as long as I can see some progression, as long as I can see some ambition. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree totally. Although I would say, you know, staying up is a bit vague, like staying up and finishing 9th or staying up and finishing 17th. Like those are two very, very different things. And to your point, Charlotte, I'll take 13th or 14th again this season, but God, I want to see some better football. I just really want to see some better football. And you know, I know there's a question we're going to talk about style at some point as well, whether style is better than results. And that's a really, really interesting debate, particularly after the game against Brighton. But, you know, if that was the FA Cup and going down, I might think a little bit harder about that. You know, the League Cup is what it is.
Carabao Cup doesn't mean anything to you.
Not as much as the FA Cup, you know, okay. And but I will tell you that we've got a far better chance of winning the Carabao Cup than the FA Cup, because we're only a game away from the quarterfinals already, which is a little bit hard to believe. Maybe we'll talk about that midweek game later on in the show. But no, I mean, I don't want to go down, because my fear is that it won't be like the other times. If we do go down, you know, eventually one of these times that we go down, we are going to go into the spiral that Sunderland are in, that Leeds have been in, that Manchester City were in, you know, a long time ago. So we would be risking far too much to go down. And we can actually, it'd be an interesting conversation to talk about Ashley's views on going down. I think there's a question a little bit later on about that as well, which will be good to talk about. No, so to answer Mark's question, I would rather win nothing, because they've won nothing my whole life and most of your viewers' lives anyway. But stay in the league would be much better.
Yeah, yeah. And I also think from a sort of sales perspective, if we are still gunning for a sale of Newcastle United, be it to whoever, I know lots of people like to comment about the takeover on here, but I don't know anything, and I don't have any information for you, so I can't help. But yes, if we're still in the Premier League, the price remains the same. The likelihood of attracting like big buyers is higher. So
yeah.
Yes. King Coupe is watching. Hello, King. I don't know. I can't do a royal wave. That's your job. Serious query. Love True Faith. Adam, liked your article on the club this week. Well done, Adam. If you had a 3-point plan to improve Newcastle United, what would it be? Where would it be? But I think it's what would it be?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm sure we've all got 3, 5, and 10-point plans that we'd love to present to the club. I mean, there are lots of ways that Newcastle need to improve, but if we focus on things that are somewhat realistic, perhaps, I would really love to see the club embrace its fans again. I mean, I know this is the most obvious thing to say, and obviously preaching to the choir, talking with the True Faith family, but it drives me crazy the way that the club interacts with the fans, and frankly just doesn't appreciate that. Doesn't well, exactly. And just the fact that I feel, and I'm sure you feel, and I'm sure local fans feel, just totally underappreciated and almost unwanted by the club in many ways. So my experience is different because I live far away from Newcastle, but I'm sure fans across the world for Newcastle feel this way. So first and foremost, I would love to see the club really sort of invest in its club liaison or fan liaison, its fan communication, its availability to fans. That's a very, very serious thing. Even in these times of coronavirus, I think the club could do so much more to embrace its fans. So that would be the first one. The second one would just actually be the stadium itself. Again, I'm not a season ticket holder as much as I would love to be, but I was there.
A hell of a commute for you.
Hell of a commute, yeah. I was there this time last year. I went to the Brighton home game last year, which actually felt like a 3-0 loss, even though it was a 0-0 draw. And it was just really sad to me to see the sort of stadium in the state that it's in now, the conditions around the stadium, but also just the feeling of being there isn't the same as it was certainly when I was young, but even when the last time I was there. Just didn't feel the same to me. Now, a bit of that is the team, some of that is the manager, a lot of that is the owner. But again, just sort of generally, I think the club could do so much more to make the match day experience itself and the stadium feel more homely to fans again, build a better atmosphere. And a lot of that is collaboration with fans groups, obviously. So that would be the second point. And then the third point would be, just to, again, sort of work with the local community more. Again, I remember Newcastle really being known as a community club. And there is some work that the foundation does, which I think is tremendous. Like the foundation might actually be the best thing about the club. But certainly that could be improved, working with the local community, particularly now, working with food banks, working with local charities to not only grow their own resources, but just build a better base of a sort of foundation with local community and with the fans. It doesn't seem like any of those three things are particularly hard, wouldn't particularly cost a lot of money, but would make a massive and sort of immediate impact to the club, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think that community engagement and at the risk of sounding a bit crude, those are really easy wins for the club.
Right.
You don't need to do much to engage with the community, to have conversations with food banks, charities, what's going on in the city, what can the club get involved with, sporting events that aren't just football, there's loads of stuff. And I'm sure that, I've had this conversation with lots of different people about all the different things like that the club and the space they've got this humongous stadium, open that up to other things. I have ideas in my head, but I won't go into them. But
I also think just the last point, to jump in for a sec. I think another thing that drives me crazy as an international fan, but also just fans that are from outside of Newcastle that want to travel up to the game. the club should be just totally embracing that, and they should be available to international fans to put packages together. I mean, this is such a simple concept, right? If I'm flying into England to go to a Newcastle game, I should be able to reach out to the club and say, look, I'm coming over on these dates to go to this game. I'd like to do a stadium tour. I'd like to talk to a local tourism expert. I'd like to talk about a hotel package.
Yeah,
just so simple.
Yeah,
So simple to do. You know, it would take one person to coordinate that. And I've heard other stories about fans trying to get in contact with the club when they're traveling from overseas, and there's just no communication whatsoever. So if anything, it makes you feel better as a local that they also don't communicate with the larger Newcastle family.
It's literally nobody. They don't discriminate. It's just nobody. Yeah, I think that the sort of the theme is communication, isn't it? And it's, I don't have too much to add to what you've said. I think you've been extremely concise, and that's a question that just came in. So great manifesto. All right, back to our Patreon questions. John Paul Morrow, would you be happier with positive attacking football, but with defensive frailties leading to a bottom half finish and flirting with relegation, or drab defensive football that sneak us into the top half of the table with lots of goalless draws? Oh, that sounds like a thrill, doesn't it? That last one.
So exciting. So exciting.
Oh, it's hard to say, isn't it? When I talk to people like Keith Gillespie, when we did our YouTube with Keith and our series of podcasts with him, and he talks about just how attacking, how little actual emphasis was on the defense back then, and how much fun that was to watch. Like, I was just a kid, but if I look back at it now, you can see all this stuff on YouTube. It's just so much more of a thrill, isn't it? It's hard to say. I don't want to flirt with relegation, though. What do you think?
Well, and this is the debate that I think Newcastle fans have been having over the last 18 months, particularly since Steve Bruce came in. And we saw the perfect example of it this past weekend with Brighton. And actually, I remember this from last time we played Brighton. There was this fan debate about, would you rather have a manager who is known as sort of being progressive, whatever that means in footballing terms, that has a sort of direction to all of their play. They build a team, they build a squad around a certain mentality. Obviously, Arsenal do it, Man City do it, Chelsea are starting to do it. They're at the very top of the league. In Brighton's case, though, they finished below us. And I know this was on a True Faith podcast not that long ago as well. So Brighton are labelled as having a real way of playing, a way of attacking, a way of getting the ball down and passing and having lots of possession. But they were only safe from relegation with, I think, 2 games to go last year. So is that better than playing Steve Bruce ball, whatever that is, and really not flirting with relegation at all? I mean, I think the last time we were in the relegation zone was, game 8 or game 9 of last season. So we were crap, but we were safe. Whereas Brighton are lovely to look at and get lots of plaudits from the pundits and the media, but they finished 16th or 17th. So which of those is better? I mean, obviously a mixture of the two would be better. I don't want to flirt with relegation. I'm sick of doing that. I also don't want to play crap football, which I fear that we might be doing that again. But it's such a Jekyll and Hyde thing, because we've had 2 Premier League games and we've seen 2 totally different Newcastles. So is the West Ham game the Newcastle we're going to get under Steve Bruce now that he's got his players and so on and so forth, or was that just a mirage and we're actually going to get the Brighton game for another 36 games and maybe we'll sneak by again? But if those goalless draws are away, I'd be okay with that, because an away point in the Premier League's usually a good point. But we've got to start beating the teams around us. I know it's a bit existential to say that, but we've got to beat the teams around us more than we did last year, because I don't think we can rely on beating Chelsea in the last minute, beating Man U, drawing with Man City. That's not likely to get us to where we want to go over the long haul. We're going to have to start beating Brighton at home, and only taking 1 point off Norwich last year, and Fulham always seem to beat us, so we've got them twice to come still. So I don't know. It's a really difficult question. I think the longer that Bruce continues to not have an identity or not have a consistent identity, to his tactics and to what his Newcastle is supposed to look like, this debate's not going to go away. Now, if we finish ninth, then everyone will say, well, that was Brucey's tactic. That was because of Bruce. Whereas in reality, it might be for luck again, as it was last year. Our statistics last season were so terrible that, frankly, without luck, we would have gone down. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah. I don't know. I was talking to Alex about the why was it like two completely different teams between Brighton and West Ham and Brighton?
Yeah, same lineup.
Yeah, but he was sort of like, because West Ham are a 2005 team, and Brighton aren't. Like, Brighton are an ambitious, like, it's taken them time. They've flirted with relegation. But their football is not shit and old fashioned.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, West Ham looked like they had virtually no idea what they were supposed to be doing either last weekend. And it might be that we got lucky when we played them. If we played them 2 or 3 months from now, probably wouldn't have been such an easy game. So we might have caught them off guard, if you will.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love Bruce to come out with a real identity and have a consistent tactic to what he's trying to do. But I fear that's just probably not his style.
Yeah, I also fear that. I don't want to slag off Steve Bruce. We've done a lot of that, but I don't want to, and I also don't want to, there are some questions about Rafa which I will ask. People have asked them. We're here to please the people, but there's lots of let him go sort of thing. But anyway, so topical. Adam Morrison wants to know, do you think that we have to accept that Steve Bruce will be our long-term manager, whatever the results are, or do you still have hope that someone like Pochettino or an up-and-coming young manager will be appointed? So I was thinking about this question when I loaded it in. I think that, Steve Bruce is probably not going to go anywhere for a little while, as long as we're in the Premier League and we're not bought. We don't have to accept his football. We don't have to just sit back and be like, okay, that's us. What can you do? It's like accepting that that's the reality, and then separately rejecting the week on week degeneration of our team.
Yeah.
If that happens, I hope that doesn't happen. Look, I would love someone like Poch to come in. I genuinely think that he would be a wonderful manager at Newcastle, but or a young one, and Arteta obviously was never going to come, but that would have been great. Someone really wants to make their mark, someone who really wants to change things and show the world what they've got. But I don't think that's the reality. So yeah, Adam.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, I think my opinion has changed a little bit on how long Bruce will get this year, and only because we've seen a different sort of way of approaching the transfer window from Mike Ashley, and that's a whole separate debate, whether that was Steve Bruce convincing him, whether that was panic over the buyout, whether that was taking the lead from the potential buyers about players, blah, blah, blah. That's for a whole nother time. But there's no doubt that it has been a different transfer window to the previous one. So the way I'm approaching that is that Mike Ashley has an increased sense of awareness about the future of Newcastle United, even if it's in the very short term in his hopes and obviously in our hopes. So you made the point that Steve Bruce probably is our guy until we're in a relegation fight. I just think Mike Ashley will not give him as long as he did with Steve McLaren, right? So he made that massive mistake by giving McLaren 6 or 7 games longer than he should have. And even with Rafa then coming in, we still got relegated. Had Rafa had 5, 6, 7 more games, would we have stayed up? Hard to say, right, in hindsight. But I don't think Steve Bruce is as concrete in that job as other managers have been, even though he is a very Mike Ashley manager. I think if we go 4, 5, 6 games without winning or without getting a point, and come Christmas time or even holiday season, as they call it over here, if we're rooted to the bottom of the league, or if we're struggling to stay out of the relegation zone, and Mike Ashley is still the owner, I think there will be a serious conversation about whether he needs to make a change and get someone in just to get us safe enough to stay out of the relegation zone. So that won't be someone like Pochettino or a young manager with a progressive label attached. It will be someone that is there just to get us to the end of the season. So again, my sort of belief around all of this is that Ashley sort of is working under a 1 season timeline right now. I think he wants to get through this 1 season as safe as possible without any drama, and then look to sell the club again down the road. Again, that's a whole nother topic. But I think in the short term, we have to accept that Steve Bruce is the manager, and we're going to have this rumbling debate about tactics and whether there are any, or whether it's just luck or just throwing the lads out there. But you know, if things don't go well, I really do believe that Mike Ashley will sort of pull the trigger sooner than he has in the past.
That's interesting. And I suppose if you subscribe to the viewpoint that in making the signings that Mike Ashley has made or like sanctioned in this window was an act of protecting his asset, of keeping, of really attempting to keep us up and to keep the price up and to keep us a good prospect for any buyer, I could kind of see your point of view there. Like, he has to protect his asset. So if we are rooted to the bottom of the table at Christmas in the holiday season, then yeah, maybe you're right. I don't know. I still don't think we're going to be, and I don't think he's going to go anywhere. But we'll see.
Certainly hope not.
Yeah. Next one from Anthony Edmonds Fahy. I've written his name twice. You're welcome. If Bruce gets sacked, could we tempt Rafa back? Now, this is the one I alluded to earlier. He adds a little bit of colour to that. So with Rafa not doing so well in China with the global pandemic, his family live in England. His family is still on the Wirral, I think. The transfer policy seems to have changed. We know we've made these really positive signings. A move back to Newcastle United could be more appealing than 12 months ago. From Ashley's point of view, he would keep the team in the league and get fans on side, and with Rafa involved, would make the club more appealing to investors. For those of you listening, that pause was because I accidentally spread this question out over like 1 million comments on our YouTube. I don't think Rafa Benitez would come back while Mike Ashley owns the club. That's just, I think the circumstances that you've outlined there are absolutely true and probably do make it slightly, probably do raise questions in his mind maybe, but I don't think, even if transfer policy, he was promised all sorts of things that he didn't get. Why would you believe him again? Like,
right.
And I think, I cannot see that happening. I can't.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to. Why would he do that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it is a really well laid out question there. There's a lot of context that makes a lot of sense. But ultimately, I agree, Charlotte. I just don't see Rafa coming back to work for Mike Ashley. I know he was the sort of number one choice of the people that wanted to buy Newcastle back in 2017, 2018. So maybe that's an added element to it. But again, let's not go down that rabbit hole. I just don't think Rafa would work again for Mike Ashley, to your point, because of the broken promises. Now, does he want to come back to England for those other reasons? His family, the global pandemic, he hasn't had a lot of success in China. He might well want to come back to England, but he might want to go to a club other than Newcastle. There probably will be a top 6 or 7 manager fired this year. So Rafa will come up in those conversations because he always does. Because of the success he's had. So, I think that the readers' points are really valid, but I just don't see those things adding up to him coming back to Newcastle, frankly.
Yeah, no, it's a nice dream, but right now, no. Liam and UFC vibes? Who knows? Says, what about Rodrigo Vilca? So this is a very young Brazilian?
Peruvian.
Peruvian. Oh God, how bad is that? Of me, not because he's Peruvian. Peruvian player. I think that they have their eye on. There's a little bit about him in the Chronicle today. I think they're targeting him for sort of the under 23 side. If you can hear screaming, there's foxes in my garden, right? They are unbelievably loud all of the time. Sorry. Yeah, so they're looking, he's not going to be a first team addition as far as I understood it. They're looking at him, and he's relatively cheap. I think he's like $500,000 or less than that or something.
Yeah.
So what about him? What about him?
Well, he comes highly recommended by Nobby Solano, so that's good enough for me. If Nobby Solano likes him, that's good enough for me. I mean, I think this is a sort of long-term plan, perhaps. My understanding from reading the Chronicle and some other sites is they want to sign him in this window, keep him at the club probably until January to sort of see him out in England, make sure he's settled, check his ability out, at close up, and then probably look to loan him out for the second half of the season. Right. Having played a handful of games for the under 23s, or maybe a cup game if we continue to get lower league opposition. So I mean that is all really good sounding, and frankly, it's a little bit unlike Mike Ashley, and it goes against what we were just talking about with his sort of 1 year strategy that he might have in place. But for £300,000 or £400,000, I think it's virtually no risk to us whatsoever. Yeah. And he comes, does come highly recommended, not only by Nobby Solano, but by journalists over here and in South America too. So I think it would be a good signing and more ammunition for Bruce to have different options, particularly going forward. So yeah, that would be good for me.
Yeah, there's something encouraging about that sort of building out the youth talent. Our as far as I understand it, our training facilities and our academy aren't brilliant, and there could be a lot more money put into them. But yeah. I mean, even sort of that this is on the table or being talked about, I find encouraging.
Yeah, it's sort of funny. The last person I remember being talked about like this was Iosi Perez, right? He was signed from, I think, Tenerife for maybe £500,000 or £1 million, and I remember the talk back then was that he was really being brought in to join the under 23 squad again, to sort of take a closer look at him and how he'd sort of match up physically to the English game. And he was in the first team squad within a couple of months, as I remember. So maybe that's what they're trying to do again. Lightning strike twice, so to speak, with a player like that. So that would be great.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think, as you say, the risk is very low for somebody so cheap. I don't like describing people as cheap, but he's cheap. Okay, and our final question, I think, from Liam again: would you take Milik? Milik, is that how we say it? I don't know. Yeah. I'm sorry. Would you take him?
Yeah, I would. He's
for Napoli right now, right?
Yeah, and he's played for Ajax, I believe, as well. So he's he's a well known sort of proven goal scorer, and we need another one of those. Yeah.
I'm butting in, and I'm really sorry. You can tell it's getting towards the end of it where I'm just getting rowdy. He's a proven goal scorer in Serie A. Do you think that would translate to Premier League?
Boy, that's a big question. There are lots of examples of it working well, and there are probably even more examples of it not working well. I mean, the Serie A has really come downhill in the last sort of decade. Again, you could do a whole podcast on that probably. Yeah. But it's not the league it used to be, and there's not as much parity as there used to be in that league. So there are some really, really good teams, and then everybody else is really crap, basically. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he's proven to be able to score goals against really crap teams. So that might be something that's better than some of the strikers we have right now. So just given the fact that we desperately need another striker, in my opinion, I think it would be good if we did sign someone like that. I think it's a bit of a fairy tale. I think there would be serious money involved in that. I don't think it's a loan deal from what I've read. So I think just broadly across the transfer window now in the last 12 days or whatever it is, we'll be looking at a couple of loan signings and probably far more outgoings than ingoings. But to Liam's question, I would absolutely take him if they can make that work.
yeah, it's sort of a like, yeah, all right.
Yeah,
Why not?
yeah.
And then Liam's also asked, what if the takeover happened? What if, Liam? Gosh,
What if?
I'm not even, we can't, we'd go on forever and ever. What if? That would be very, very good. Right, we'll wrap it up there. Adam, thank you so much. We've gone longer than I told you we would, so apologies to your family that I've kept you from.
It's been great.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure we'll have you back. And thank you, everybody who asked us questions. Once again, the New True Faith print fanzine is out for you to buy with your money. Go to true-faith.co.uk if you would like to buy it. Go there anyway. Why not? Check it out. Have a look at the website. It's nice. And everybody have a lovely weekend. We will be back next week with another YouTube thing probably, and in the meantime I imagine we'll have absolutely spanked Gareth Bale at Tottenham. So thanks so much for watching. Take care.
Thank you guys.